Ladies and gentlemen, they thought pressure would crush her. They assumed the storm would silence her praise, that betrayal would steal her smile, disappointment would dry up her hope. They miscalculated, because what they were dealing with was not ordinary strength. It was divinely engineered resilience. She was forged in places no one applauded, built in seasons where she had to encourage herself, where tears were her closest companion, where prayers were whispered because strength to shout was gone. Yet, what tried to break her only strengthened her foundation. What came to dissolve her faith only deepened her roots. She didn't survive because life was gentle. She survived because God was intentional. See, when God builds a woman different, hardship does not define her, it refines her. Rejection does not remove her, it redirects her. Delay does not deny her, it develops her. Every closed door trained her endurance. Every lonely night sharpened her discernment. Every tear watered the soil of a future she could not yet see. They tried to label her as weak because she cried. But they did not understand that tears were not surrender, they were release. They judged her silence without realizing it was preparation, not defeat. While they were talking about her, God was working in her. While they attempted to limit her, heaven was activating her. What they could not break was her connection. Her praise stayed intact. Prayer life remained alive. Her faith, though shaken, was never shattered. She learned how to stand when no one was clapping, how to keep moving when affirmation was missing, how to trust God when evidence was absent. And now comes the shift. The same woman they underestimated is standing with clarity, wisdom, and authority. She doesn't need to explain herself. Her growth is her testimony. She doesn't carry bitterness, she carries lessons. She doesn't seek revenge, she walks in revelation. Different to endure what would destroy others. Different to love after being wounded. Different to forgive without an apology. Different to rise without resentment. So let them watch. Let them wonder. Question how she survived what should have crushed her. The answer is simple. She was never built to break. She was built to rise. There comes a moment and in every journey when you must decide whose voice will define you. The world is full of opinions. Loud, confident, and often contradictory. People will tell you who you are, what you can become, and how far you are allowed to go. They will measure you by their limited understanding, label you according to their personal experiences, and judge you based on what they can see in a single season. But long before any human ever formed an opinion about you, there was a divine design already in motion. You were not an afterthought. You were not a mistake of timing or circumstance. You were intentional, crafted with purpose, shaped by wisdom beyond human logic, placed on this earth with a calling that cannot be canceled by human approval or disapproval. God's design for your life was settled before criticism ever found your name. What people see is often incomplete, but what God designed is already whole. Human opinion is fragile because it is rooted in perspective. People speak from what they know, what they fear, and what they have experienced. They cannot see the full picture of your journey because they were not present when your foundation was formed. They did not hear the prayers you whispered in silence. They did not endure the nights you cried yourself to sleep, wondering if you would make it through another day. Yet they feel qualified to judge the strength of your future by the weakness of your past. Divine design operates on a higher level. It does not consult popular opinion before moving forward. It does not pause for explanation or wait for validation. God's design is purposeful even when it appears confusing. There will be seasons when your life does not make sense to others because they are not meant to understand the process, only the result. What looks like delay to them is often development. What appears like obscurity is often protection. There are moments when human opinion will try to force you into a version of yourself that feels smaller than what you were created to be. People may push you toward comfort when God is calling you toward courage. They may advise you to settle when heaven has prepared you to stretch. Human opinion will often choose what feels safe, predictable, and familiar. Divine design, however, will challenge you to step into spaces that require faith, obedience, and trust beyond what you can see. The danger of living by human opinion is that you slowly lose the clarity of who you truly are. You begin to filter your decisions through the expectations of others. You silence your instincts because they don't align with what people approve of. You start shrinking your dreams, dimming your light, and apologizing for the very qualities God placed inside you. What was meant to be celebrated becomes something you try to hide. But when you align yourself with divine design, something shifts on the inside. You gain the courage to say, I cannot be reduced to fit your comfort. You stop explaining your obedience to those who do not understand your calling. You learn how to stand firm without becoming defensive. There is a quiet confidence that comes from knowing you are walking in alignment rather than applause. Divine design also means that your journey will not be identical to anyone else's. Comparison loses its power when you understand that your blueprint is unique. You stop rushing your process because you realize timing matters. A premature promotion can damage what maturity was meant to protect. God is not interested in speed without substance. He is committed to depth, character, and sustainability. Human opinion will praise you one day and criticize you the next. It is unstable and inconsistent. If you build your identity on it, you will always be adjusting just to keep people pleased. Divine design, however, gives you stability. Even when misunderstood, you remain grounded. Even when rejected, you remain secure. Even when alone, you remain confident that you are not abandoned. You are being prepared. There will be moments when obeying God causes people to walk away, not because you are wrong, but because your obedience confronts their comfort. Your growth will expose areas they did not want to address. Your strength will remind them of excuses they no longer want to justify. When that happens, human opinion will attempt to guilt you into shrinking back to who you used to be. Do not go backward to satisfy those who refuse to grow forward. God's design includes resistance. If you were built according to divine purpose, you will encounter opposition. Not everything that challenges you is designed to stop you. Some things are sent to strengthen you. Resistance proves there is something valuable inside you worth pushing against. Storms do not visit empty oceans. They rise against substance. Divine design also carries responsibility. Once you recognize that your life is God-shaped, you can no longer afford to live casually. You must guard what has been placed inside you. Not everyone deserves access to your process. Not every opinion deserves a response. Wisdom is knowing when to listen and when to walk away in silence. You no longer need external validation to move forward. You start measuring success by obedience, not applause. Peace becomes your confirmation. Alignment becomes your reward. You realize that fulfilling purpose feels better than being popular, and being whole matters more than being liked. At the end of the day, human opinion will fade, but divine design will remain. History rarely remembers critics, but it always makes room for those who dared to walk in purpose despite opposition. The same God who designed you knows how to sustain you. He understands every chapter, every delay, every detour. Nothing is wasted, so stand in who you were created to be. Walk boldly even when misunderstood. Trust the design even when the path feels unclear. You are not defined by what people say. You are established by what God has spoken. He designed cannot be undone by human hands, human mouths, or human minds. Pressure is often misunderstood. We are taught to fear it, to avoid it, to pray that it passes quickly. We associate pressure with pain, stress, opposition, and struggle. Yet pressure is not always sent to destroy you. Many times, it is sent to discover you. Long before purpose is revealed publicly, it is tested privately, and pressure is the environment where that testing happens. There are dimensions of strength, wisdom, endurance, and faith that remain hidden until pressure is applied. You can read about courage, talk about perseverance, and admire resilience from a distance, but you do not truly know what is within you until life presses against you. Comfort introduces potential. Pressure introduces purpose. When pressure arrives, it feels personal. It feels unfair. It feels targeted. You begin asking why the weight seems heavier for you than for others. But purpose is rarely given to those who remain unchallenged. Responsibility grows in proportion to capacity, and capacity is enlarged through pressure. What you carry determines what you encounter. Purpose is not revealed in applause, it is uncovered in adversity. When everything around you shakes, what stands is what is real. Pressure strips away performance and exposes authenticity. It removes the false layers and forces you to confront who you really are. what you truly believe, where your trust genuinely rests. Many people abandon the process because they interpret pressure as punishment. They assume something is wrong because things are hard. But pressure is not always a sign that you are off track. Often, it is evidence that you are being stretched to handle what is coming next. The weight you feel now is training you for elevation later. Pressure has a refining power. It purifies motives, clarifies priorities, and sharpens discernment. Under pressure, distractions lose their appeal. You stop wasting energy on what does not matter. Your prayers get more focused. Your decisions become more intentional. Pressure demands that you grow up. Give up. You begin to see yourself differently under pressure. Strength you never acknowledge comes to the surface. Boundaries you never enforce suddenly become necessary. Faith moves from theory to survival. You discover that what you thought would break you actually builds you. The same fire meant to burn you becomes the source of your transformation. Pressure also reveals purpose by exposing misplaced dependencies. When support systems fall apart, you learn where your foundation truly is. When people walk away, you learn how to stand alone without collapsing. When answers delay, you learn patience. When resources tighten, you learn stewardship. Pressure doesn't just show you who you are, it teaches you who you can rely on. There are some things God will not reveal in ease because ease would cheapen the calling. Some assignments require maturity that only pressure can produce. You cannot carry influence without integrity. You cannot handle visibility without humility. You cannot lead others through storms you've never survived yourself. Pressure redirects you. It closes doors you were never meant to walk through and forces you into paths you didn't plan. What feels like disruption is often divine interruption. Pressure becomes the push that moves you closer to alignment. What you resisted in comfort, you embrace in struggle. Under pressure, excuses expire. You can no longer blame circumstances, people, or timing. The responsibility of growth becomes personal. You realize that waiting for perfect conditions is no longer an option. Purpose demands movement even when conditions are imperfect. Pressure also strengthens vision. When everything is calm, vision can become blurry. But under pressure, what matters becomes clear. You recognize what is worth fighting for and what needs to be released. You stop negotiating your values. You refuse to compromise your integrity for momentary relief. There is a reason pressure comes before promotion. Promotion exposes. It amplifies character. Pride is unchecked, it will surface. If insecurity is hidden, it will reveal itself. Pressure addresses what elevation would expose. It prepares you so success does not destroy you. What you endure now is given language to your future testimony. The pain is shaping perspective. Struggle is building empathy. The silence is developing discernment. One day, you will speak from experience, not theory. Your authority will come from what you survived, not just what you studied. Pressure teaches restraint. It teaches you when to speak and when to remain silent. Teaches you to respond instead of react. It trains emotional discipline. Under pressure, wisdom learns how to lead emotion rather than be led by it. Many people quit under pressure because they expect relief instead of revelation. But pressure is not just something to escape. It is something to learn from. If you listen carefully, pressure is speaking. It is pointing you toward growth, alignment, and purpose. Purpose is not a destination you arrive at suddenly. It is a reality you are prepared for gradually. Pressure is part of that preparation. It is shaping you quietly while everyone focuses on the visible struggle. What people see as breaking you is actually building capacity inside you. One day, you will look back and realize the pressure was not sent to stop you. It was sent to show you what you're capable of. The weight you carried expanded your strength. The fire you endured refined your character. The resistance you faced trained your resilience. Pressure reveals purpose because purpose requires responsibility, and responsibility requires readiness. Readiness is not developed in ease. It is formed under weight. And when you emerge on the other side, you will not just be relieved that the pressure ended, you will be grateful for what it revealed. The world often treats tears as evidence of defeat. From an early age, many are taught to hide them, suppress them, apologize for them. Strength is celebrated when emotions are concealed, when pain is swallowed, and when the face remains unmoved. This understanding is incomplete and deeply flawed. Tears are not a breakdown of strength. They are often the evidence that strength is actively at work. Tears are not a surrender. They are a tool. Tears appear when the soul reaches a place words cannot reach. They form when the heart carries more than language can hold. There are moments when pain becomes too heavy to describe, when disappointment digs too deep for explanation, when grief silences vocabulary altogether. In those moments, tears speak. They become a language of release, a sacred expression of what the spirit is processing. To cry is not to collapse, it is to communicate. Tears acknowledge reality. They refuse denial. Cry, you are not pretending that everything is fine when it is not. You are allowing truth to surface. Suppressed pain does not disappear, buries itself and resurfaces later in unhealthy ways. Tears, however, allow pain to move rather than remain stagnant. They are part of emotional circulation. Just as the body must release toxins to stay healthy, the soul must release grief, disappointment, and overwhelm to remain whole. Tears become tools of healing because they create space. When you cry, something shifts internally. The tension that is built up begins to loosen. The pressure that has been locked inside finally finds an exit. This release is not weakness, it is wisdom. It takes courage to face pain instead of numbing it. It takes strength to feel deeply rather than shutting down. Tears prove you are still alive on the inside. Many mistake tears for a lack of faith. Tears and faith often walk together. Faith does not cancel emotion, it anchors it. Crying does not mean you doubt God. It often means you trust Him enough to be honest. Tears are prayers when words fail. They are the overflow of hope when expectation has been delayed. Even sacred history is filled with individuals who cried through seasons of uncertainty, loss, and longing. Their tears did not disqualify them. They prepared them. Tears are tools because they mark moments of transformation. Something old is leaving, something new is forming. You rarely cry over what does not matter. Tears reveal what you value, what you love, and what has touched you deeply. They show where investment was real. And where there is real investment, there is the potential for real growth. There are tears of grief and tears of relief. Tears of disappointment and tears of clarity. Tears that fall in silence and tears that burst uncontrollably. Each serves a purpose. Grief tears honor what was lost. Relief tears release survival tension after a long battle. Clarity tears arrive when truth finally breaks through confusion. None of them are random. Each one carries weight, meaning tears also soften what hardship hardens. Life can make hearts callous. Rejection can make people cold. Betrayal can make trust difficult, but tears keep the heart tender. They prevent bitterness from taking permanent residence. They cleanse the inner world so compassion can remain. A heart that still cries is a heart that has not given up on feeling, loving, or hoping. Crying privately requires just as much strength as standing publicly. There is bravery in facing yourself without an audience, allowing emotions to surface without performance or approval. Silent tears, those shed in the quiet of the night, are often the most powerful. No one applauds them. No one validates them, yet they do the deepest work. Tears also teach emotional intelligence. When you allow yourself to feel, you become more aware of your limits, your needs, and your boundaries. You learn when rest is necessary, when distance is healthy, and when change is required. Tears are signals, not failures. Ignoring them leads to burnout. Listening to them leads to growth. Many people wear emotional numbness as a badge of honor. Numbness is not strength, it is unprocessed pain. True strength is the ability to remain open despite scars. Tears prove that pain did not shut you down. They prove you did not lose your humanity in the process of survival. Tears can also be seeds. What falls from your eyes in private often rises as wisdom in public. Today's tears become tomorrow's testimony. They deepen empathy. They enlarge understanding. They shape purpose. Someone who has cried deeply listens differently, loves differently, and leads differently. Tears increase the capacity to comfort others not with theory, but with compassion. There are seasons when tears are frequent because growth is happening rapidly. Just as physical stretching can cause discomfort, emotional growth can produce tears. The soul expands through pressure, and tears are part of that expansion. They signal that you are not stagnant, even if you feel exhausted. You do not need to apologize for your tears. They are not an inconvenience. They are not shameful. They are sacred evidence that you are processing instead of pretending. Healing requires honesty. Tears are honesty in their purest form. Eventually, tears slow, not because pain never returns, but because maturity develops. You learn how to carry emotions with balance. You learn how to weep without losing hope. You learn how to feel deeply without falling apart. Tears remain tools, not crutches. In the end, tears should be respected, not ridiculed. They are proof of resilience, not weakness. They are evidence that despite the pressure, you did not harden, you healed, you did not break, you bent, released, and stood again stronger than before. Silence is often misunderstood as absence, weakness, or delay. In a world driven by noise, visibility, and constant expression, being silent can feel like being left behind. When no one is calling your name, when your efforts seem unnoticed, and when your voice is not being heard, it is easy to assume that nothing is happening. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is preparation. Some of the most defining work in your life happens when there is no audience, when there is no applause, when there is no recognition. Silence is the space where foundations are strengthened, motives are purified, and character is shaped. What is loud may get attention, but what is built in silence lasts. Preparation often requires removal from distraction, removal from validation, removal from unnecessary voices. Silence strips away the desire to perform and forces you to become. When no one is watching, you are confronted with who you really are, not who you present yourself to be. Growth that happens in silence shapes authenticity rather than image. Silence teaches patience. It stretches your ability to wait without becoming bitter. Waiting without clarity is uncomfortable, but it trains endurance. Every season is meant for expression. Some seasons are assigned to absorption. Silence allows you to learn, observe, and mature without pressure to explain or defend your journey. In silence, your inner voice grows clearer. Without constant external noise, you begin to recognize intuition, discernment, and wisdom. You learn the difference between impulse and conviction. You become more aware of emotional patterns, reactions, and triggers. Silence exposes areas that need healing and gives you room to address them honestly. Many people fear silence because it forces self-reflection. When external noise stops, internal truths get louder. But avoidance delays growth. Silence invites you to sit with unanswered questions, unresolved wounds, and unfulfilled expectations. It does not rush healing. It allows it to be thorough. Silence reveals maturity must heal. Silence also protects development. Not everything needs to be announced. Seeds grow underground, not in open air. Premature exposure can damage fragile beginnings. Vision needs privacy before it can handle public pressure. Silence guards purpose from criticism, sabotage, discouragement before it is fully formed. There are lessons that cannot be learned publicly. Dependency, humility, discipline, obedience are often taught in hidden seasons. Silence humbles ambition and purifies intention. It teaches you to serve without being seen and to remain committed without reward. This kind of growth produces stability instead of self-importance. Silence strengthens discernment. When you stop responding to every opinion, you gain clarity. You learn which voices carry wisdom and which only bring confusion. Silence trains emotional control. You realize that not every attack requires a response, and not every misunderstanding needs correction. Peace becomes more valuable than proving a point. In silence, frustration can surface. Feelings of invisibility, rejection, or insignificance may arise. These emotions reveal attachment to recognition. Silence gently breaks those attachments, shifting identity away from exposure and toward purpose. You begin to understand that value is not measured by visibility. Preparation in silence is often mistaken for stagnation. Others may assume you have stopped progressing because they cannot see movement, but roots grow deeper when branches are hidden. Often, greatest progress is internal, emotional maturity, mental clarity, spiritual depth. These developments rarely announce themselves. Silence also teaches timing. It helps you understand when to speak and when to hold back. Wisdom is not about how much you say, but about when and how you say it. Silence prepares your voice so that when you do speak, your words carry weight. Loud voices compete, prepared voices impact. In quiet seasons, Resilience is built. You learn how to stand alone without losing confidence. You become comfortable with solitude without feeling abandoned. Silence teaches self-support and internal strength. You develop the ability to validate yourself instead of depending on external affirmation. Silence can also be a form of trust. Trust that growth is happening even when you cannot see evidence. Trust that timing has a purpose. Trust that preparation is unfolding according to a plan bigger than immediate results. This trust anchors you during uncertainty and protects you from impulsive decisions driven by impatience. Many people try to escape silence by staying busy. Constant activity becomes a distraction from reflection. But business cannot replace preparation. Silence allows alignment. It helps you evaluate whether your actions match your values and whether your goals align with your calling. When silence ends, expression becomes powerful. Preparation is complete. Elevation comes with stability. Those who skip silent seasons often struggle with exposure. They seek attention but lack substance. Silence builds substance so visibility does not overwhelm you. Silence also produces empathy. Time alone deepens understanding of others. Personal growth expands compassion. Those who have endured silence understand how to listen. They speak with sensitivity and wisdom because they have first listened deeply, both to themselves and to life. Even when silence feels unfair, it is purposeful. It is shaping endurance, attention, and discipline. It is eliminating dependency on instant gratification. It is preparing you to handle influence responsibly. You may not be able to explain why your journey looks quiet right now. You may be tempted to compare your progress to louder success stories. Preparation rarely looks impressive while it is happening. Its value is revealed later. Silence does not mean nothing is happening. It means something important is happening in hidden places. Something that must be strong before it is seen. Something that must be rooted before it is raised. One day, your presence will speak before you do. Your words will carry authority without force. Your confidence will come from depth, not noise. When that happens, you will understand silence was never a delay. It was preparation. Rejection has a way of cutting deep. It does not simply close a door. It questions your worth, your ability, and sometimes even your identity. When rejection happens, it feels personal. You replay conversations in your mind, examine your flaws under a microscope, and wonder what more you could have done to be chosen, accepted, or appreciated. Rejection leaves marks that are not always visible, but they shape the way you see yourself and the world around you. And yet, rejection is often misunderstood. What feels like abandonment is frequently alignment. What looks like loss is often guidance. Rejection, painful as it is, can become redirection. Many people interpret rejection as a verdict on their value. They assume that being rejected means being unworthy. But rejection is rarely about worth. It is about fit, timing, and purpose. You can be valuable and still be refused. You can be gifted and still be overlooked. Not every door is meant to open because not every space is designed to hold who you are becoming. Redirection rarely announces itself gently. It often comes with disappointment because it requires release. It requires you to let go of expectations you had carefully built, forces you to confront attachments to people, positions, and plans that felt right to you. Rejection disrupts comfort, but disruption is sometimes necessary to prevent stagnation. There are paths you would have stayed on too long if rejection had not intervened. There are environments you would have tolerated that would have damaged your growth. Rejection forces movement when convenience would have kept you still. It pushes you away from what is familiar so you can discover what is aligned. Rejection also reveals misplaced identity. Your sense of worth is attached to a role, a relationship, or a group. Rejection shakes your foundation. It exposes where you have allowed external validation to define internal value. Though uncomfortable, this revelation is necessary. You cannot move forward well if your identity is dependent on acceptance that can be withdrawn at any moment. As rejection redirects you, it sharpens discernment. You begin to see more clearly what you need, what you can no longer tolerate, and what you are unwilling to compromise. What once seemed appealing loses its shine. What once frightened you becomes necessary. Growth often begins with clarity that comes from being removed. Rejection also clarifies motives. When acceptance is easy, motives can remain shallow. But when rejection hits, you must answer honest questions. Why did I want this? Was it purpose or pursuit of approval? Was it alignment or attachment? Redirection brings refinement, helping you choose paths that feed your purpose rather than your ego. Not every rejection is dramatic. Some are subtle, a missed opportunity, a silent dismissal, a relationship that slowly fades. Others are sudden, public, and painful. But regardless of how they arrive, their impact is the same. They create space. And space, though uncomfortable, is necessary for growth. In that space, something begins to form. Perspective changes. Strength develops. You learn how to stand alone without collapsing. You learn that survival does not require constant acceptance. Rejection teaches you resilience by proving that you are capable of enduring discomfort without losing yourself. There are connections that cannot follow you into your next season. Rejection removes what cannot sustain your future. It exposes who was attached to access rather than alignment. This kind of separation feels like loss, but it is protection. Everyone who walks away is an enemy. Some are simply unable to go where you are headed. Redirection also protects you from compromise. Had certain doors opened, you might have settled for less than what you were designed to carry. You might have shrunk to fit expectations that were never meant to define you. Rejection saves you from becoming a smaller version of yourself. Over time, you realize that rejection did not stop you, it guided you. It rerouted your steps toward places you would have ignored otherwise. Opportunities that never crossed your mind suddenly appear. Growth that once felt impossible becomes necessary. What felt like an ending introduces a beginning you could not see at the time. Rejection also deepens empathy. When you have been rejected, you treat others with greater understanding. You know what silence feels like. You recognize the weight of exclusion. This empathy shapes leadership, relationships, and service. Those who have been redirected by rejection often carry wisdom that those who have only been accepted never develop. As you continue forward, rejection loses its power to define you. It still hurts, but it no longer controls your identity. You learn how to grieve without getting stuck. You honor what was while making room for what can be. Redirection becomes a language you understand instead of fear. Looking back, patterns become visible. The closed doors make sense. The relationships that ended were limiting. The opportunities that fell through would have required compromise. What once confused you now feels intentional. Rejection forms a trail of guidance you could not interpret in the moment, but now recognize as care. Eventually, gratitude replaces resentment, not because rejection felt good, but because it protected your path. It positioned you where growth was possible. It aligned you with environments that could receive you fully rather than tolerate you partially. Rejection becomes redirection when you stop asking, "Why wasn't I chosen?" and start asking, "Where am I being led?" The question shifts perspective from pain to purpose. And in that shift, rejection loses its sting and gains meaning. You were not denied. You were guided. You were not pushed aside. You were positioned. What rejected you could not sustain the weight of who you were becoming. And where you are going, you will be fully received, not as who you try to be, as who you were always meant to become. Faith is easy when life is predictable, when prayers are answered quickly, and when pathways are clear. The faith that cannot be broken is not formed in comfort. It is forged in confusion, refined in delay, and strengthened in struggle. Breakable faith is not the absence of questions. It is the decision to trust even when answers are withheld. There are seasons when faith is all you have left. When strength fades, support disappears, and certainty dissolves, faith becomes the anchor that keeps you from drifting. It is not loud or dramatic in these moments. Often it is quiet, trembling, and barely spoken. Yet this quiet faith carries more power than confident declarations because it survives without evidence. Broken circumstances attempt to fracture belief. Disappointment challenges trust. Silence tests patience. But faith that cannot be broken does not depend on outcomes. It depends on conviction. It knows that reality may shift, but truth remains constant. This kind of faith develops gradually. It grows through repeated surrender. Each time expectations collapse, faith learns flexibility. Each time plans fail, faith adapts. You stop expecting faith to protect you from pain and start trusting it to guide you through pain. Faith becomes less about controlling outcomes and more about maintaining connection. Unbreakable faith also learns endurance. It waits without surrendering hope. It rests without giving up belief. It stands even when knees are weak. This faith does not demand immediate understanding. It trusts that clarity will come when growth has been completed. There are moments when faith feels stretched thin. You believe, yet you ache. You trust, yet you grieve. Faith that cannot be broken allows these contradictions. It does not require perfection. It allows humanity to coexist with belief. This balance deepens faith rather than weakening it. Faith that can't be broken also survives isolation. It does not rely on constant encouragement or agreement. In lonely seasons, it learns self-support. Faith becomes an internal strength rather than an external reinforcement. When no one is there to affirm your journey, faith affirms you. Storms often expose superficial belief. When pressure rises, shallow faith fades. But deep-rooted faith holds. It may bend, but it does not snap. Absorbs impact rather than resisting reality. It understands that resilience comes from rootedness, not resistance. Unbreakable faith evolves. It matures beyond conditional trust. It stops trying to bargain with God. It no longer says, I'll believe if. Instead, it declares, even if doors stay closed, even if answers delay, even if outcomes differ from expectations, faith remains. There are times when faith must survive disappointment with God, when events unfold differently than you prayed, when silence replaces reassurance. Faith that cannot be broken does not deny disappointment, it processes it. It brings honesty into belief instead of suppressing emotion. Faith grows when truth is welcomed, not when feelings are hidden. Unbreakable faith also surrenders control. It releases the need to understand everything, accepts mystery without withdrawing trust. This surrender is not passive, it is courageous. It requires strength to let go of certainty while maintaining belief. Faith that cannot be broken finds purpose in pain, understands that growth often arrives disguised as difficulty. It doesn't glorify suffering, but it doesn't waste it either. Pain becomes a teacher rather than an enemy. The lesson may not be immediate, but it is impactful. This faith gains perspective over time. What once felt catastrophic becomes instructional. What once felt like loss becomes preparation. Faith learns to see beyond moments and into process. It recognizes that the journey matters as much as the destination. Unbreakable faith also becomes contagious. It inspires others not because it is flawless, but because it is real. People who witness faith that survives hardship find hope for their own endurance. This faith carries credibility because it has history. Faith that can't be broken learns how to rest. It does not panic when progress slows. It understands that stillness does not equal stagnation. Faith trusts timing. It has learned that rushing ruins readiness. At some point, faith stops proving itself and starts settling in. It becomes less emotional and more anchored. Less reactive, more steady. Faith turns into confidence that outlasts mood and circumstance. Faith that couldn't be broken still feels. It still hopes, it still prays, but it no longer fears collapse. It has been through too much to quit now. End of every storm, faith stands, not victorious because it avoided struggle, but victorious because it remained. And remaining sometimes is the greatest victory of all. There comes a stage in maturity where you stop announcing your progress. You no longer feel the need to narrate your healing, justify your decisions, or explain how you arrived at the version of yourself standing today. Growth without explanation is not silence born of fear. It is silence born of clarity. It is the understanding that not everyone deserves access to your process. Not everyone could understand it even if you tried to explain. In earlier seasons, growth feels fragile. You want reassurance, you want validation. You want people to recognize how far you've come. But as maturity deepens, the need to be seen reduces. You realize that true growth does not demand witnesses. It becomes self-evident in how you live, how you respond, and how you move through the world. Explaining growth often pulls you back into old versions of yourself. It forces you to revisit wounds that have already healed. It invites others to debate your experience as if it were open for approval. Growth without explanation protects peace. It allows evolution to continue without interruption. Some changes cannot be articulated because they happen internally. How do you explain a renewed sense of worth? How do you describe the moment you stopped tolerating what drains you? How do you put into words the quiet decision to choose yourself without guilt? Growth like this does not come from a single event. It comes from accumulated clarity. People who knew your past may feel uncomfortable with your growth, not because it is wrong, because it challenges their narrative of you. They may ask questions, not out of curiosity, but out of resistance. Explanation becomes an invitation for misunderstanding. Silence, in this case, is wisdom. Growth without explanation is an act of self-trust. It shows that you no longer seek permission to evolve. You allow yourself to change without needing consensus. You understand that your journey is personal, that growth is not a group decision. There is power in letting action speak. Your boundaries communicate your healing. Your calm reflects your discipline. Your consistency reveals commitment. You don't need to tell people you've grown. They can feel the difference in how you show up as you grow. Certain conversations no longer feel necessary. You stop defending your pace. You stop justifying your absence. You stop explaining your priorities. Not because you are arrogant, but because you are aligned. Growth simplifies communication because it removes confusion. There was a time when you explained yourself endlessly, hoping to be understood. But growth teaches you that being understood by everyone is unrealistic. You learn to be at peace with being misunderstood. This acceptance is a sign of deep emotional maturity. Growth without explanation also requires strength. Silence can be misinterpreted. People may project their assumptions onto you. They may fill gaps with their own stories. Growth teaches you not to correct every false narrative. Truth does not need maintenance. It stands on its own. This kind of growth changes how you view conflict. You no longer argue to prove your point. You no longer chase closure from those who cannot give it. You learn that some doors close without discussion, and some chapters end without announcement. Growth without explanation reflects healed validation wounds. You are no longer dependent on acknowledgement to feel secure. You no longer wait for applause to move forward. Confidence becomes internal rather than reactive. Growth is real. It affects your environment. Relationships shift. Dynamics change. Some people move closer, others move away. You don't explain these changes because they are natural consequences of evolution, not deliberate offenses. There is freedom in not rehearsing your story. You stop reliving pain for the sake of clarity. You start living present moments, dragging the past for reference. Growth detaches you from the need to revisit trauma. Silence in growth is not avoidance. It is embodiment. You don't talk about discipline, you live it. You don't announce healing, you demonstrate it. You don't explain peace, you remain calm when tested. Eventually, growth without explanation becomes a form of leadership. Others observe and learn. They see transformation without presentation. This kind of influence is subtle but powerful. There will always be those who want explanations because it makes them comfortable. Your growth unsettles them. It disrupts familiarity. But you are not responsible for their comfort. You are responsible for your alignment. Growth without explanation honors personal wisdom. It respects timing. It values peace. It chooses depth over display. And in time, those who matter will not require explanations. They will recognize growth when they see it. Revenge feels powerful in the moment. It promises satisfaction, balance, and the illusion of justice. When you are deeply hurt, betrayed, or wronged, the desire to retaliate can feel justified. Pain demands relief. Anger wants expression. But revenge only gives temporary relief while creating long-term damage. Forgiveness, though far more difficult, offers something deeper and far more sustaining freedom. Choosing forgiveness over revenge is not weakness. It is strength redirected. Revenge requires you to stay emotionally tied to the very pain you want to escape. It keeps your focus locked on the wound, replaying the injury again and again. Forgiveness, however, loosens that grip. It doesn't pretend the pain didn't happen. It refuses to let pain become your prison. Forgiveness is often misunderstood as excusing harmful behavior. It is not approval, denial, or erasure. Forgiveness acknowledges the wrong fully and then chooses not to become consumed by it. It is the decision to stop extending the influence of harm beyond its original moment. Forgiveness says, "This hurt me. It will not control me." Revenge places your healing in someone else's hands. You wait for an apology that may never come. You hope the other person feels the same pain you felt. But healing that depends on someone else's remorse is fragile and delayed. Forgiveness takes healing back into your own hands. It does not wait for acknowledgement. It creates closure internally. Holding on to revenge keeps one's open. Anger may feel energizing, but it drains patience, peace, and clarity over time. It leaks into relationships, distorts perception, and shapes behavior. Forgiveness stops that leakage. It closes the wound so growth can resume. Choosing forgiveness requires emotional courage. You must feel the pain instead of transferring it. You must grieve what was lost instead of attacking what remains. Forgiveness asks you to sit with discomfort long enough for it to change you instead of hardening you. Revenge can never undo the past. It only repeats its damage in a new form. Forgiveness, though it cannot erase the past, can release its hold on the present. It restores forward movement. It allows life to continue without dragging injury behind it. Forgiveness creates boundaries. Contrary to popular belief, forgiving does not mean staying accessible to people who hurt you. You can forgive and still protect yourself. Forgiveness clears your heart. Boundaries protect your future. Revenge confuses the two and often sacrifices safety for satisfaction. Forgiveness also reshapes identity. You stop defining yourself by what was done to you. You stop being the injured one seeking justice and become the healed one choosing peace. That shift changes how you see yourself and how others experience you. Forgiveness teaches emotional maturity. It recognizes that people act from brokenness or ignorance. This understanding does not justify harm, but it provides context. And context, when healthy, reduces bitterness. Revenge fuels cycles. Forgiveness interrupts them. Without forgiveness, hurt is passed along, spoken, acted out, and absorbed by others. Forgiveness absorbs pain without passing it forward, breaking patterns that would otherwise continue. There are moments when forgiveness feels almost impossible, when the betrayal was deep, when the damage was public, when the loss was irreversible. Forgiveness in these moments is not instant. It is gradual, folds in layers. Some days it feels strong, other days it hurts again. But even gradual forgiveness heals more than instant revenge. As forgiveness grows, bitterness fades, not because memory disappears, but because emotional charge weakens. The event no longer controls your state. It becomes part of your story, not the center of it. Forgiveness also deepens compassion for oneself. You stop blaming yourself for what you didn't know then. You release shame. You allow growth. Revenge keeps you stuck in judgment. Forgiveness allows learning. Choosing forgiveness does not mean trusting again blindly. Trust is rebuilt through consistency. Forgiveness clears the heart. Trust evaluates behavior. They are different processes. Over time, forgiveness creates space for joy. Emotional energy once spent on anger becomes available for creativity, connection, and purpose. This is how forgiveness restores life. Forgiveness over revenge is a declaration: I refuse to let pain shape who I become. I choose peace over pride, freedom over fury, healing over harm. Life has a way of testing strength in ways no one prepares you for. Pressure builds quietly at first, small disappointments, subtle betrayals, unanswered prayers, and expectations that fall short. Over time, the weight increases. From the outside, it may look like too much for any one person to carry. But there is a truth deeper than circumstance, stronger than opposition, and louder than doubt. You were built to rise, not to break. Breaking suggests fragility. Rising suggests design. What breaks was not built to endure sustained pressure, but what rises has been engineered for resistance. The storms that confront you are not accidental. They reveal the structure within you. They test what can bend without snapping, what can endure without dissolving. Every challenge is asking a single question: were you built to collapse or to climb? Rising does not mean you are untouched by pain. It does not mean you are immune to discouragement or immune to tears. Rising means that pain does not have the final voice. You may bend under the weight, but you do not remain down. You may feel worn, but you are not worn out. There is a reserve of strength placed inside you that surfaces only when necessary. Being built to rise means resilience is part of your makeup. Resilience is not loud or dramatic. It is persistent. It shows up when you keep going after disappointment, when you stand again after setback, when you choose hope one more time despite exhaustion. Resilience does not deny difficulty. It refuses to be defined by it. Some pressures are meant to expose breaking points. Others are meant to expand capacity. Many experiences that feel like they will destroy you are actually shaping your endurance. What you survive adjusts your posture, sharpens your awareness, deepens your discernment. Rising comes with learning. You don't just endure, you evolve. Breaking would be surrender to circumstance. Rising is alignment with purpose. Purpose gives pain direction. Without purpose, struggle feels random. With purpose, adversity becomes instruction. You begin to understand that what you've been fighting was never meant to stop you. It was meant to prepare you. Those built to rise learn how to recover. Recovery becomes a skill. You learn how to rest without quitting. You learn how to pause without losing momentum. Rest does not mean weakness. It ensures longevity. Rising people recognize when to retreat briefly so they can advance fully. There are moments when life applies enough pressure to expose hidden fears. Fear of failure, fear of abandonment, fear of not being enough. Rising requires confronting these fears honestly. You don't ignore them. You move through them. Strength grows where fear once lived. Being built to rise also reshapes your relationship with failure. Failure becomes information, not identity. It teaches instead of condemns. You stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking, "What is this teaching me?" This shift changes everything. Rising individuals understand that growth is often lonely. Climbing requires leaving familiar ground. Not everyone can walk with you in higher places. Detachment is not abandonment, it is elevation. Breaking would mean staying where it's comfortable. Rising means going where it's necessary. Those built to rise also learn discipline. Pain without discipline leads to bitterness. Pain with discipline leads to wisdom. Discipline helps you respond thoughtfully rather than react emotionally. It teaches you consistency even in instability. Resilience strengthens identity. Time, you stop seeing yourself as someone who barely survived and start recognizing yourself as someone who endured. This recognition empowers future resilience. You trust yourself more because you've seen what you can survive. Rising requires patience. Pressure demands quick exits, but growth requires timing. You do not rush healing. You allow it to develop fully. Incomplete healing carries vulnerabilities that pressure can exploit. Those built to rise invest in wholeness. There comes a moment when you realize that breaking never happened, even when you thought it would. The fear was louder than reality. The storm was violent. The foundation held. This realization builds confidence that remains. Being built to rise means you carry perspective. You don't panic at every setback. You've seen valleys before. You know ascent follows descent. This knowledge stabilizes emotion and steadies action. Ultimately, rising is not about proving toughness to the world. It's about honoring the strength placed within you. It's about refusing to surrender your future to present pain. It's about trusting that you were designed with intention and reinforced with endurance. You were never built to shatter at the first sign of pressure. You were crafted to withstand, adapt, and advance. You were built to rise again and again, not because life is kind, but because you are strong.